Welcome everybody to the afternoon session of this final public meeting of the GAIN project. It's a busy afternoon with lots of very interesting talks, chance to revisit some good friends as well. Unfortunately, John Grant can't be with us today for personal reasons, but he's very ably replaced by Meredith, who's going to tell us about some aspects of international collaboration. So please go ahead, Meredith.
All right, can you see that?
Yes, very good.
Great. Minimize this. Oops. All right. Hello, everybody. So unfortunately, John couldn't be here today for personal reasons. But I'm his PhD student, Meredith, and I'll be presenting some of the results from our international collaboration. Oops. Sorry, the computer is. It's weird. Sorry, 1 second. My computer is not happy. Okay. So we conducted our studies in Canada with Innovasi and Cook Aquaculture. However, we did collaborate a lot with other GAIN partners such as Cook Scotland, IBM, the University of Stirling, and Gildascol. And in addition, I'll also present some of the results from another of GAIN's international partners, Changbo Zhu from the South China Sea Fisheries Research Institute, and his team studies on shrimp rice aquaponics. So a lot of our collaboration was with IBM, providing data for the development of precision aquaculture, for example, with this paper that Fergal mentioned during his talk earlier. However, I'm not going to speak any more about this, as I think the talks by Fergal and Joao cover that adequately earlier. So on our side for this project, we sought to answer 4 main research questions using 4 different approaches. So first, we wanted to understand the oceanographic conditions that lead to oxygen and temperature related stress. So to do so, we set up a network of real-time sensors. And the next, we wanted to investigate the interventions to mitigate oxygen and temperature stress. So for this, we examined the use of an oxygen supplementation system. And then we wanted to develop a catalog of fish behaviors that indicated these stressors as well as disease. And to do so, we used fish tags. And then lastly, we wanted to provide decision support to farms through the development of an app. So for understanding oceanographic conditions and better understand the environmental conditions that lead to oxygen stress, we used a network of real-time sensors. So the Internet of Things has given rise to a data-driven approach to aquaculture management, where data can be accessed in real time via connected sensor networks and allow for command and control decisions, for example, through this app by Innovasi that you can see here. So this app shows the different parameters that were collected by the farms. And then the overall goal for this is to hook it up to the feeding system or an oxygen system if one exists, so that the farmers can start using this app directly to, for example, stop feeding or start oxygen, things like that. So after understanding the baseline oceanographic conditions, we then wanted to investigate how we can intervene to mitigate water quality problems. So one of the ways we thought was worth looking into was the use of oxygenation. So examples of oxygenation or aeration are the addition of oxygen stripped from air, or to aerate the water using just air alone, or to pump up water from depths to mix the water column. So this research was a combined effort between myself and Caitlin Stockwell, who did her master's with us over the last couple of years. Oh. Sorry. So here are her 2 papers that she did on this topic. So she looked at the environmental events such as low DO, storms, temperature, etc., on the swimming behavior and positioning of fish, and then also looked at the oxygen supplementation on fish behavior. And then I looked at the environmental side of things. So how oxygen and temperature varies through a farm and what drives this variation, and then how the oxygen supplementation affected dissolved oxygen concentrations and temperature in the cages. So I'll just talk about the oxygen supplementation research that we did. For this, we focused on this aquaculture site here on the east coast of Canada, Nova Scotia. There were 6 cages here, each about 48 meters in diameter and a stocking density of 11 kilograms per meter cube. So then, as I mentioned, we used a network of these real-time optical sensors by Innovasi that recorded oxygen and temperature every 5 minutes. And we deployed these sensors in this way. So 4 at 2 meters depth in a north, south, east, west orientation, and then 1 at 7 meters depth in the center of the cage. And this was the oxygen system we used. It was the NetOx system, and it consists of wheels of these concentric tubes of perforated tubing that release these micro bubbles of oxygen that you can see here. And there were 4 of these wheels deployed in this north, south, east, west configuration at about 7 meters depth. So Caitlin then deployed 15 Femco acoustic tags to study fish behavior. So it collected 3D positioning of the fish every 3 seconds. So this is how our processing worked. So we can see this is what the 3D positioning looked like. Then she filtered the data using relative error values. There was then some math involved, and she ended up with 4 fish variables that she used to define movement. So distance from the center, depth, velocity, and turning angle. For example, here's just what some baseline data looked like prior to the use of oxygenation. So the dark bars indicate when it was night, and each color is a different fish. So we can see they behaved a little bit differently, but overall there's this pattern of descending to depth during the day and then ascending at night, which has been shown in many studies before. And here's just a periodogram, which shows the dominant periodic frequency in the data. So here it's at about 24 hours. So this just shows what the periodicity of this behavior that you can see here. So next, I wanted to look at the time series of the temperature measurements within 3 of the cages that had oxygen. I just zoomed into one of them. So here, the lighter bar indicates 2 meters depth, and the darker bar is 7 meters depth, and the black line is satellite sea surface temperature. The gray bars indicate when oxygen was turned off. So this is when oxygen began, and then the subsequent gray bars are just due to some mechanical issues and oxygen was turned off. So we can see that the oxygenation is first turned on. There's this rapid decrease in temperature, and we attributed this to the oxygen system as it's not seen in the satellite sea surface temperature. And then in late August, there was an overturning of the water column, which destratified the cage, and the oxygen system seemed to have less of an effect on the temperature after this point. So here are the oxygen time series. So again, zooming into the same cage with the lighter bars still indicating 2 meters and the darker bars indicating 7 meters. And the black line here is just a reference that was deployed late into the study period. So while oxygen didn't quite increase as much as we were expecting, it's important to note that the oxygen levels never reached critical thresholds for these temperatures. So in the past, they have reached critical thresholds and there's been a lot of mortality. So it could be that the system allowed for the maintenance of adequate oxygen rather than raising levels to supersaturation. And then we can see the same as we saw in temperature, with the oxygen system having less of an effect after destratification. So here we can look at the changes in behavior of the fish before and after oxygenation. So here's the changes in percent, and it's from before to after. And each bar indicates a different fish. So we can see that overall the fish swam slower after oxygenation. They swam closer to the cage edge. They swam in a straighter line, and they swam at a shallower depth. So next we want to understand how the regional dynamics impact these coastal oxygen dynamics. So to do so, we've sent out a Slocum profiling glider, which looks like this. And it collected oxygen and temperature data along this transect here in red. And so it yo-yoed up and down to about 40 meters depth. This transect also encompasses the farm that we studied in this oxygen supplementation study, as well as other farms that we have studied in the past. And lastly, we hope to use these coastal circulation models with the goal of predicting low oxygen for farmers. These models can also help in the development of an app like the Innovacy app I talked about earlier, so that farm managers can see when low oxygen is likely to occur and then plan accordingly. So another collaboration was with partners in China. So I'll be presenting a few results from Changbo Zhu's team. This is the paper they wrote here if you want to know more. So the study examined shrimp pond rice paddy co-culture, and they found that sediments from the pond containing shrimp can be pumped into the rice paddy field as fertilizer. Dissolved nutrients were absorbed by rice, which allowed for the better survival and growth of shrimp, as well as a double harvest of both shrimp and rice, and with zero discharges of waste. So the results of this study suggested that integrating shrimp rice pond culture was an effective method to improve nutrient utilization efficiency and helped to illustrate the potential application of integrated brackish water shrimp rice models in coastal areas of China and other countries. So this is the production for the two species. So there was 7,620 kilograms of shrimp per hectare produced, and then 5,050 kilograms of rice per hectare produced. And so the aquaponics here took place in a saline alkali area, here where there's this cross. And this kind of research takes place, it usually takes place in freshwater, so it was novel in this way. And there are many benefits that come from this type of co-culture. So the restoration and reclamation of saline alkali lands, the development of rural economy with high value aqua products, and then also the employment and welfare of rural communities. And that is all I have. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Meredith. There's an echo on here somehow. So can I have some questions? For me, it doesn't really matter if they're in the chat or if somebody just wants to go ahead and speak. That would make it more like normality for me. So I'll open the floor out. We have some time.
I have a question for Meredith, if I may. And you said that, if I understood correctly, that when you supplement oxygen, you have an effect on temperature, on water temperature. Which could be the explanation of that? Which physical process can drive this change?
So we have seen in other studies that the actual physical nature of oxygenation, so the bubbles bubbling up from depth, is actually bringing up cooler waters from depth. So this results in overall cooler waters within the cage.
So it's due to the vertical transport of water particles, which is driven by the oxygen.
Yeah, exactly.
And you mentioned the web app. Is it something that, the app for the farmer, is it something that you are still developing? Which would be the main message for the farmers based on the results that you have got thus far?
Yeah, so we haven't really done anything with that yet. We're still hoping that we can develop the app, but overall, the goal was to maybe work with Innovacy on the app that's already developed in order to kind of provide them with models and predicting capabilities so that the farmers can see the environmental conditions that are happening in the next day up to maybe 3 or 4 days, and then they can see maybe a lot of warm waters are anticipated, and then the oxygen is likely to be low. So in that case, maybe even like alter their feeding schedule or harvest early, or if they do get an oxygen system that proves to actually be very effective, they can turn on the oxygen system, something like that.
Okay. So there are some similarities with the work that we have been doing in my team in a completely different environment, which is a land-based trout farm on, let's say, to some extent, a similar issue. That was very, very interesting for me to do that.
Dave, you have a question?
Meredith, what was the salinity in these trials you ran in China that you managed to get such good production of rice as well as shrimp?
So I was not involved in this study. I was just presenting the results. So I will refer you to the paper that they wrote because I'm not sure.
That's fine. Sorry. Thanks.
Yeah, I thought that was very interesting as well because you get pre-salted rice, which is unusual, right?
Yeah.
Well, it must be a very saline resistant strain, and it said something about what you can do when you work with agronomists, I would say, and get outside just looking at it as a fish system and thinking of it as a food system. So, well done on you guys doing that work with our Chinese partners. That's great.
Yeah, if I may mention that, there should be the complete recording of Changbo video from the summer school that explains in detail this what they did.
Great. More questions for Meredith? Okay, well, I think that's great. Thank you very much for standing in there and giving us such a nice talk. Roberto, my judgment on this session is that since we are all in one plenary, if we run ahead of time, that's not a problem, and we just move a little faster. Does that agree with your thoughts? Okay.
Of course.
All right, then. So we'll move on to the next contribution, GAIN contribution to the FAO Regional Technical Platform. Anton Immink. Anton, you're doing the presentation, or is Don, or you both doing it?
Me? No, I'm doing it. Yeah.
All right. Well, if you got slides, you want to set them up, let's get going. Excellent.
Oh, can you see my screen?
Not yet. It just says you started screen sharing. I'm hoping that something's going to materialize.
No, it's gone into, I don't know what's happened. Sorry.
You want to try again?
Well, it just says hold control to share to select multiple windows, but I don't want to do that.
But I think that's on your local machine, though.
It's just frozen. Excellent.
You're 3 minutes ahead of your start time, so you know there's nothing to worry about.
Ah, there you go. There's now unfrozen.
There you go. But you're not on full screen. That's the only thing.
No. Okay. Now I am. Okay, the computer's caught up with itself. Technology. Thanks, Sharon. Appreciate the thumbs up. So yeah, this isn't a GAIN output specifically, but I wanted to. Roberto gave me the chance to present today on a piece of work that I've been doing with Don Griffiths and the team at FAO regional office in Bangkok on the development of this regional technical platform on aquaculture. So we contacted Roberto primarily because we see it as a potential opportunity for some of the outputs of GAIN to be presented to a wider audience. So I'll give you a quick run through of the evolution of the RTP and outline the opportunity. Okay. So the RTP AQ, aquaculture, is set out to support blue transformation of aquaculture, the delivery of the SDGs and the commitments to the Shanghai Declaration. So blue transformation is the new framing that FAO has for aquaculture development generally. Obviously SDGs I think people are all aware of, and the Shanghai Declaration is a declaration that was made at the end of the Global Conference on Aquaculture. But basically you can sign up to the Shanghai Declaration and commit to support the broad ambitions which cut across all aspects of aquaculture. So this platform is to help deliver each of those elements, particularly from an FAO perspective, but hopefully supporting wider stakeholder base, particularly in Asia. So the platform also aims to increase knowledge sharing amongst stakeholders, to share experiences and learnings between regions. So not just an Asian focus, but a global reach, hopefully, as well. And to capitalize on collaboration to drive greater innovation and best practices in all regions, and bring together stakeholders to increase investment opportunities. I think some of these cut across GAIN's ambitions and would be familiar to many others anyway. This is one of several platforms. There are other platforms that FAO have supported the development of this year, particularly around, for example, water scarcity, family farming. There's other parts of agriculture more broadly. So the suggested functionalities for the RTPs are as one-stop knowledge hubs, so connecting to other FAO resources particularly, promoting existing knowledge products to increase their use. So there's plenty of information there, but it's not necessarily always actively used. And to act as a bit more of a kind of hub that can highlight what projects are going on and what the outputs of projects are, to hopefully increase access and understanding both of what's happening right now, but what has gone before. And there was some ambition not to, to try and get over this challenge that means we often replicate research, particularly if it's not being published strongly in academic journals. And to develop new knowledge products or increase the functionality of existing ones. So perhaps taking more technical documents to develop more manuals, step-by-step manuals that farmers might be able to use, or to produce videos or something more useful perhaps for farmers. So the focus for FAO very much around kind of policymakers and farmers being able to utilise this knowledge. And then as a network coordinator, to create, manage and keep up to date partner information. So the FAO offices work with a series of partners in all the regions that they're working. So to kind of keep a better record of what is going on, and who's doing what, who to engage, in terms of experts as well, to get pieces of work done. And to connect the training needs and providers. So there are plenty of training opportunities that institutions deliver, but they're not always promoted to perhaps as wider audience as we would hope. And there are, of course, other networks and channels for doing this, but this is FAO strongly attempting to kind of support all of these actions. So we did, when the GAIN summer school was on, for example, and there was an opportunity for African and Asian attendees, then we disseminated that amongst the FAO networks in both Africa and Asia. And to build an ecosystem for increasing investment opportunities. So this is both potentially commercial investment, but also access to global multilateral donor funding programs to particularly support those global ambitions that were referenced at the start around the Shanghai Declaration and the transformation. And also to identify technical consultants. So within FAO, there is a system where they really try to support and promote the idea of South-South cooperation. So particularly developing countries sending experts to share knowledge and guide development. But they don't have the kind of technical expertise necessarily in the group in FAO that does that. So this is just an opportunity to propose key technical consultants as well. And then as an event organizer, so just really facilitating dialogues, webinars, online workshops, technical knowledge sharing events, as well as training events and FAO consultations. So, for example, to gather input, that's the guidelines for sustainable aquaculture. So where FAO has to, or where FAO does deliver consultations, then there was an opportunity for this platform to facilitate that because of the networks that would have been built. So target stakeholders, FAO headquarters and regional offices particularly, and then hopefully collaborators who would also find this whole process useful. We've got, for example, the Chinese Academy of Fisheries Sciences, the Indian research institutions, InfoFish, NACA. These are InfoFish, NACA and CIFDEC are regional aquaculture research and development organizations, and WorldFish, I guess many of you are aware of as well. And then to engage with other regions and to look for collaboration opportunities. So I've underlined Europe there because, particularly today, thinking about any lessons that we learned from the GAIN project or lessons that the GAIN project might wish to share, and see if we can kind of build some of those into what the RTP can offer. And users, I think those collaborators are definitely users as well. The FAO regional offices, country offices, governments, value chain actors, so very much farmers, although a lot of the information is perhaps one step away from a lot of small scale farmers being able to access it because of language issues, perhaps technology issues, format issues, and academia, NGOs, donors, investors, so the usual suspects, I suppose. So in terms of opportunities for your input, the kind of key reason that we'd contacted Roberto, apart from my advisory role on GAIN and my engagement in the development of this platform, is that we think that there's an opportunity to develop case studies. So this is the kind of key entry point at the moment, apart from sharing training opportunities, of course, if you have any, but in developing case studies, particularly around novel technologies or innovations, but we do ask that there is some use of this practically somewhere. So it's not theoretical, it's got some applied use already. So there is a real chance that it can be replicated. Someone could come and visit a demonstration farm, not just a research farm, but a commercial demonstration farm, for example. We could tell the story of a farmer to demonstrate that it's in use. And it should have potential application in Asia or elsewhere in the developing world, particularly. But at the moment, we're very interested in any technologies that could have application in Asia, even if they're being developed in or have been developed in Europe. If there's a clear opportunity, then we think it would be an interesting case study to develop. So if we could, we believe that if we can showcase those innovations to FAO networks, it may lead to future project involvement. It of course is a nice output for GAIN if there's an opportunity to highlight that it was presented in an FAO platform. And as I mentioned earlier, sharing training opportunities. So please do share training opportunities as well. And any other networking opportunities. So online meetings like this, whatever else. This regional technical platform has only been developed over the last few months. It's still constrained a little bit by the governance requirements within FAO, but we are hoping that it will become a little bit more dynamic and demonstrate its value. But maybe there's opportunity if there are interesting technologies and approaches that you have for involvement in future. For future projects, there's some thinking around the development of some major projects in Asia at the moment around dealing with climate change, around looking at how novel technologies can particularly support small scale farmers and smaller scale farmers to cope with the challenges of climate change. So, any questions, please ask away, or if you have any ideas or case studies that you'd like to share, then do please email me as you see it there. It's my personal work email address. It's not an FAO email address. I do have to clarify that I've given this presentation in a personal capacity, not as an FAO consultant or member of staff. Thanks.
Okay, thanks very much, Anton. Look forward to questions if there are people that are interested in commenting on this. I think it's a very important side of the whole GAIN involvement in terms of trying to share and extend what we do with other parts of the world. I think it's sorely needed in terms of the information deficit that you see in many other countries that produce a lot of fish. I, for one, can tell you that we would be very happy to work with a farm in any of the Asian countries, or more than one farm, that has sensors deployed to try and bring them into the Aquasense ecosystem, to use the current word for these things, and to be able to help them simulate growth and environmental effects for some of their species. Because we've got quite a range of models, they're not all in Aquasense at the moment, but they're easy to add. We could certainly accommodate tilapia and vaname, which would be species I think that might be of interest in that part of the world.
Yeah, I think some of the challenges there are that these farmers, don't have sensors. So, but there should be projects that can be exploring deploying these sensors as well with farmers, and then having that kind of management guidance or management system would definitely be very useful.
Yeah, I mean, there's a certain irony there, because a lot of the sensors, the low-cost stuff, is actually being manufactured in that part of the world. And,
Yes.
Yeah. So I think there are other opportunities. Sorry, Dave and Roberto, but I think there are other opportunities from GAIN around the kind of feed side, the circular economy pieces of work. As João mentioned there, the environmental management or digital tools side of things. I think there are definitely opportunities. Dave, sorry.
Just a point really, that the sort of deployment of sensors in the countries of Asia. I mean, I think that really is a really important follow-up sort of action. One of the things that sort of marks out how that was done, as I understand it, but maybe others will correct me, is that there were particular problems deploying certain types of sensors in marine environments that were, quite rough, quite disconnected. And I'm just wondering on the challenge of deploying perhaps cheaper sensors in poorer parts of the world that are disconnected, but for different reasons. Perhaps the communications are not so good. Maybe there's not mains electricity or whatever. And I think I'm not sure how GAIN can go from what it's done, and whether there's interest in our partners in Dalhousie and elsewhere about taking those ideas forward and deploying them where, let's face it, there is, most aquaculture in the world exists. And even a little increase in the margins of productivity of those systems will have massive impacts if rolled out.
I guess that was a question to colleagues as well, not just me, Dave.
Yeah, I don't know if Matt Service is on from AFBI, because they've been doing some quite interesting things with low-cost sensors. I'm not sure he is on, but perhaps later on that can be talked to a little bit. I think there's quite a lot of options now on the table, and it's one of these very disruptive environments in terms of costs and not so much, I don't think, in terms of parameters. I mean, those of us who've worked in water quality over quite a large amount of years have noted that not that many novel sensors have emerged in terms of some of the parameters. That they're still quite difficult to measure with those kinds of sort of easy weaponry. But there certainly has been a complete change in the panorama of costs and so forth. And I think that's the point. The cost of sensors is really a marginal cost on a fish farm. It's very small by comparison to the potential benefits. I mean, it's far lower than the cost of feed.
Yeah,
and it's a one-time thing. I mean, I'm talking, I would say, a few €1,000 for tops for some of the things that are coming out. Anyway, I know Heather's on. Heather, if you speak to Matt and Matt is coming back on here, it'd be good to have him give us a few words about that, because this is a public meeting, and if we can air some of those themes, that would be a good thing.
I mean, definitely challenges with farmers in Asia spending, even $500 can be a challenge. Even for shrimp farmers who make a reasonable living as well, it's often challenging to get them to use them because they don't, the value proposition isn't so clear or so strongly put forward. Even with all these different companies that have sensors and farm management tools, and it continues to be a challenge. Companies like Jala and eFishery, for example, who have sensors, automatic feeders, they're still very challenged to engage smaller scale producers.
Mm-hmm. Is Don on? Perhaps Don would like to add something. We have a bit of time, or is
I don't know that Don has made it onto the afternoon session.
Right, because he's on a different time zone, isn't he? Is that
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. More questions, comments? Anybody? It's a pretty open session, as these things should be.
Well, I'd just like to add that as a coordinator of GAIN, I would very much welcome to engage with this platform, and I encourage, of course, other partners to do so. Probably the most mature, let's say, and concrete engagement could be in a case study, as Xiao was saying, and maybe we can also involve our Chinese partner in that, Changbo, who is there and knows also the problems and the issues, let's say, from first-hand knowledge. I agree with the difficulty of deploying sensors. It is not difficult to deploy them. The difficult part, as we try to show in GAIN, is to extract information and to show that this information is useful. This is not true only for Chinese or, let's say, Asian farmers, but also for EU farmers, because it took us about 3 days of, I would say, not daily, but constant interaction with our trout end user to set up, let's say, a fruitful collaboration in a way that now Matteo understands very well the potential advantages that he can get from the deployment of sensors. And in fact, he decided to equip a second farm with the dissolved oxygen sensors, and he asked us to give him some guidance in deploying then the oxygen supplementary tools. So, of course, this is a message that to come across takes time, and of course a lot of work on our side also to be able to speak to the people in the way they like to hear us speaking, not in the way that we speak in conferences. So this is also a communication problem that needs to be dealt with. That's at least my impression.
Yeah, very strong points, Roberto. What I should say, I didn't perhaps stress it in the presentation, but any case studies at the moment are just a couple of pages long. Right, so it doesn't have to be massively technically detailed. It needs to introduce the idea and kind of where it's being piloted and tested. We do have a simple template as well that I can share with Roberto, and then he can send to everybody, give them the opportunity, if they see that that exists, to just put a couple of fairly simple pages together, if anybody wants to.
Thank you very much. That's great. Thank you very much for giving us this opportunity. And sure. Okay.
Well, I think that was very fruitful coming in from your talk, Anton. And I think we're back on the program schedule. So I'll pass it over to Fergal. Is it you, Fergal, or?
Yeah, I'll kick things off and I'll pass over to Claire.
Okay. Well, so I think it's a bit less stressful for you now in terms of time.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Great, thanks. I will share just 1 or 2 slides and then pass over to Claire. Let me get this into full view. And I'd just like to mention as well, I think the timing of this talk is actually very good that it follows Anton, because what we're talking about here is the Global Aquaculture Challenge that was organized by Claire and co at the Yield Lab Asia. And what that focuses on is Claire will give more details here on this, but in essence, a non-equity accelerator program for aquaculture startups globally. And while Claire and Co are located in Asia, this was naturally a global challenge, but a lot of the startups that we engaged with in the accelerator were located in Asia and working extensively in Asia. And I must admit, I was extremely impressed by the degree of innovation coming from the cohort there. And I think it is worth bearing in mind as we are having these conversations that these kind of cross-continental collaborations, they're very much a two-way street. It's certainly not innovation going east or anything of that nature. And what I want to talk about here briefly as an introduction is give an overview of why we engage with Global Aquaculture Challenge from both a GAIN and an IBM perspective, and where we see a lot of value from that engagement from that kind of GAIN/IBM perspective. So the process that we applied here that enabled a lot of this was twofold. So at the convening of the GAIN project, Roberto and Co were quite visionary in including the affiliate farm program and allowing for the scaling up of this work towards an greater degree of farms, pilot sites, etc., and allowing programs for flexible collaboration with external. So that provides a very valuable program, I believe, for European projects to reach beyond the usual 5 or 10 pilot sites that are part of every European project. And the second part of this was the Startup with IBM program that allows pretty seamless collaboration from our side with startups. And again, every large corporation generally has these, and also many universities have systems of this nature as well to allow more streamlined collaboration between startups and various departments and orgs. Some of the offerings available from an IBM perspective for startups, the most prominent is being a IBM Cloud and AI credits up to 120K over 12 months. So that provides access to a lot of the IBM core services. What is also available for the cohort within the Global Aquaculture Challenge was IBM research capabilities developed through GAIN. So we provided access to modeling capabilities and analytics developed within GAIN to the cohort to apply to their farms, to their data sets, etc., and understand the capabilities of AI for their specific problems and case studies. And I'll go into that in a bit more detail later, but the last slide before I pass over to Claire is I kind of wanted to give the perspective from IBM of why to engage with startups. And I think the rationale for European projects is very, very similar, because the rationale for European projects is the same. And I think it follows the discussion previously with Anton. It allows for an application factor that is not always available directly within the project itself. Startups provide a certain coolness and agility, the rapid growth potential that can allow a more rapid scaling out to multiple farms, etc. The greater collaboration and networking and visibility across different streams, etc. Because sometimes within European projects, they can be it's easy to get siloed to the pilot sites involved, to the projects involved. And I think that's especially so in the past 18 months where people aren't leaving their house anymore. So from that perspective, the engagement with the Global Aquaculture Challenge and the Yield Lab Asia, from my perspective, has been an extremely valuable mechanism to engage more directly with the aquaculture industry and develop close collaborations that we are applying assets developed within GAIN to farms from run and operated by the cohort, by some of the cohort of startups involved in the Global Aquaculture Challenge. And on that, Claire, I'll pass over to you to give a bit more detail on what the Yield Lab Asia is and what the Global Aquaculture Challenge is. Let me stop sharing here. Stop share.
All right. Thank you, Fergal. So, greetings to everybody. Hello from Singapore. Nice to meet you all. And thank you for having me, Fergal, and joining and connecting me in this session. I really appreciate the time, and what we've done, what Fergal described is, it was a great collaboration, and we hope this will continue. I thought I'd start off just so you know who I am and who the Yield Lab is maybe just give some quick context. So I'm Claire Pribula. I'm Managing Director of the Yield Lab Asia Pacific. We're a fund, a venture, an early stage seed and Series A fund, which is part of what we call the Global Federation of Yield Lab Funds, and started in North America, Europe, Latin America, and now Asia Pacific. And we're focusing across all of agriculture, crop production, animal health, sustainability, traceability, food ingredients, precision ag. And in the context of just giving you an idea of our locations and where our funds are located, and that also we have, I put it out here in the ocean here to remind me, that the Yield Lab Institute. So what we're doing is, as an early stage venture capital fund, of course, we're investing in seed and Series A directly for equity. What we do and the way we do it is very bespoke. When we identify innovations to invest in, we're working with these companies through their fragile state through to commercialization. And more like private equity, we stay with them for quite a long time. None of us are young. We're all 20, 30 years out of the industry. And we're tapping into our relationships to bring in the right kind of subject matter experts as needed to help these companies, as I mentioned, get through to commercialization. We have 60 ag tech investments globally to date. They're all successful. We've had no failures in the tech industry. The early stage investments, about a 75% failure rate. What we do is in the Institute, our not-for-profit side of the Yield Lab, is we're always forward looking at areas within agriculture that need to have more innovation, that need to be, that are still lacking in attention and focus. And then we issue challenges, and they aren't pitch competitions with an award at the end. What they are is they're run just like we do on our equity taking side, very bespoke over a better part of a year, where we're working with these companies, bringing in the subject matter experts that they need and the knowledge experts, either around the science areas that they need to finish. And the not-for-profit side, some of these innovations, they have funding and some have none. They've only had a grant or maybe just are bootstrapped with friends and family. And they're a little bit more nascent than on our equity taking side. We issued the Global Aquaculture Challenge because, as Fergal described, there's the need and the focus is great. We ran it out of Asia Pacific because the fact that 90% by tonnage of seafood and fish are coming out of the region. So it was the Asia Pacific Fund that ran this challenge. What we do is, and the reason why we do it is we're focusing on driving inefficiencies out of agriculture and to be able to make sure that there's enough affordable nutrition on this planet for everybody. It's a great challenge because you've got a lot of things working against you with the fact that most of the resources are used through traditional agriculture, water and others. Yet you've got 30% of the world's population that's making their living with and through traditional agriculture. So you need to be thoughtful in how you disrupt the system, because you want to take that 30% along with you. But at the same time, you want to, as fast as possible, identify innovation that's going to have a high impact into the sub areas within agriculture, in this case, aquaculture, and help them get into their total addressable market globally as fast as possible. And that's why the challenge. What we do is we take, with everything we do on the equity taking side or on the not-for-profit side, where it's non-dilutive, as we call it, because at the end there'll be one winner that'll get the big prize money, multiple smaller prizes, but it's all funded through sponsorship. But what we're doing is the same. We're utilizing relevant industry subject matter experts to work with these companies to help them finish the science or to get through to commercialization. And at the same time as we're tying these 20, 30-year experts with these founders, is we're closing that gap between R&D of strategic companies that are out there that are more than likely going to be the companies that do a proof of concept with them, that then turn around and invest in them and probably ultimately acquire them. Most innovation in this space is not going to go to a public offering. It's going to be through an acquisition. And we give a bigger ticket size investment on our equity taking side. And we always make sure that the producers and the innovators are involved in everything we do. And we've taken the same exact approach with our not-for-profit side. If you were to look at the Yield Lab, it would look like this cog over here, which shows all the different components of what we do. Aside from the venture capital side, we're made up of our people out of the industry. We're made up of agribusiness investments, people out of the science and academia, strategic agribusiness partners and advisors, thought leaders, mentors and producers, and then of course the strategic investment advisors. And what we do is on the right side of the slide. So we're always identifying and aligning proactively what are the regional and global food system challenges or our priorities. We always are identifying what is the gap, where we should be focusing to find innovation. And then as we're identifying the gap and the potential innovation, we're already starting to align with those subject matter experts that we think out of our industry. We've got hundreds that are in our network in each region, unpaid. If they somebody asks this question, if a stipend is required, then that's something that we do look at. But for the most part, we have a network, advisory network for people that are quite passionate about their particular area of science. We align once we select with the individuals or individuals that are going to work with these companies. We identify what we call late early stage investments. So these are not just ideas. They need to be science areas that are potentially patentable, may not be registered or patent yet, but they have the potential to be. And then we start to help these companies get through to commercialization. On the equity side, we make the investment that we negotiate individually. On the not-for-profit side, they know coming in what the opportunity is for them to win. But at the same time, throughout the entire challenge, we make sure that we get these companies in front of potential investors. So in the end, everybody comes out a winner with whether it's a strategic partnership or an investment directly from a strategic or a family fund or somebody that's been involved in the challenge. And then we help these companies get into their total addressable market as fast as possible, because that's what it's about. It's about scaling. And you don't need to have 1,000 really bright people all focusing on the same problem globally and unbeknownst to themselves. That's just inefficient. So if you can get a company that's focusing on, let's say, white spot disease and venomized shrimp into their total addressable market as fast as possible, then that can free up that space for those smart people to focus on some other challenge within the aquaculture space. So that's kind of, who we are and what we do very quickly. Why aquaculture? Why did we focus on aquaculture? Was because of the vast opportunity from a protein perspective. Very fast growing. I don't need to tell everybody on this call who understand the aquaculture industry why the protein is important, but the fact that there is a lot of opportunity for improvement in the use of technology. Aside from the high-end salmon industry, a lot of the other species really are using even sensors in the water, let alone being able to do data analytics or prescriptive analytics. So there's some basic things that need to be happening to transform the industry across all the different species. The opportunities are great. We had 100, people, you see papers written about, where is the aquaculture innovation? Well, we had 180 applications, so they're there. We selected 8 for this cohort for the Global Aquaculture Challenge 2021. They were from Argentina, Israel, Indonesia, Chile, the UK, Singapore, so from all over the world, Canada, the US. And there were innovations that included, I heard just now mentioned, Jala was one of them, which is a marketplace for shrimp in Indonesia. The previous speaker mentioned them, doing farm management and creative analytics, but also Seawater Solutions, which is a circular economy solution for smallholder farmers and regenerative for the coast. Wataya Aqua, which is really disrupting the feed industry and allowing to do bespoke feed for smallholders as well as the mills and the big feed suppliers. It's a big data play. GenuFeed, which is formulating a coating that can go over and supplement the nutrients of the larva, which on its own is not quite enough for fish. And it can be done very inexpensively using a clean cement mixer, so that smallholders alike can create the feed on the spot, feedbacks for vaccines. I don't want to run out of time, but we've got some great innovation that was part of this 8th cohort. IBM was one of our sponsors. And, with that came, it's about many things. It's about the participation as much as anything else, and the thought leadership. And through Fergal's team, they brought, the best of the environmental sciences, the data sets that have been built out around aquaculture, the technology, to the team as far as mentoring the appropriate companies that were in that particular area that needed that help. Some partnerships have been struck that has been the great outcome, aside from there being one winner, which ended up being Wataya, was that there were other partnerships that were struck with the other companies, with strategics like IBM. And so these relationships continue and the value add continues. So what we do is in the challenges, it's a nonprofit, non-equity taking, non-dilutive. It's kind of our give back to the industry. It stimulates the innovation. It draws attention to the industry. And also we may want to invest in a few of these, but so will other venture capital funds. We provide that relevant mentoring over a long period of time so that we can get them through their science completed. And in some cases, we saw their focus and attention shift a bit with the mentoring that they received. And these were like the best of the best in the industry. These were the CEOs of companies. These were the head of the GAA. They were people like Fergal, who are, have the aquaculture space out of IBM Research and environmental sciences, but individuals that could work with them and in turn allow for not only the opportunity to progress their business, but to get follow-on investment. And in the end, this becomes kind of a repeatable machine that drives on itself. And we will be doing this again with our Global Aquaculture 2022 program, where, again, we will be funded through external sponsorship and be able to raise the profile of a select 8 to 10 companies in areas for 2022 that are going to be focused are human and nutrition, smallholder farmers, the tropical diversity, looking at all the different species, regenerative systems, microalgae, RAS, zoo techniques, health management. So you may think it's kind of a wide net that we're throwing, and it's true, because that's the reason why we're doing this again. To be honest, before this aquaculture space, on our not-for-profit, we had a manure challenge. There's a lot of manure on the planet. There's not a lot of innovation. We had a soy challenge. Soy is grown everywhere. There could be new and better uses of soy. We had a sustainability challenge, looking at sustainable solutions. We've got an indoor ag initiative, which is looking at the fact that indoor farming is something that we all want. We all want fresh produce every day, but it's still not economical nor equitable to be able to run an indoor farm for, let's say, a food pantry, or for, in a food desert within a large inner city, or in countries where it's just too arid for the poor to be able to get access to fresh produce. So that's what the value proposition should be for controlled environment ag, but it still uses a lot of power, a lot of water, and it's expensive to run. So we've got an ongoing think tank that's looking at how to take technology to drive those costs down. So now the reason why we're doing the aquaculture challenge a second time is because there's just so much need, and we just haven't scratched the surface. So we will continue on, and we really thank the opportunity of IBM to be with us on this journey, and we look forward to the next phase of the Aquaculture 2022. So I don't know if anybody has any questions.
Thank you very much.
Speed talking, but trying to get myself within your time window.
Thank you very much. That was very, very interesting. I'm prepared to eat 2 minutes or 3 minutes into the next slot, because this was quite disruptive stuff, and there may be people that are interested in addressing some of the points or asking some questions. So we'll see. Maybe you could take it off the slideshow so that we can see people's faces. And
Certainly.
Thank you very much.
Any questions? Any comments, suggestions?
So I was just trying to, can you actually get off the share screen altogether?
Oh, I thought I did. I'm sorry.
Could I ask Claire, at the
It's just so I can
moment,
see people's faces for when they ask questions. It should say stop share at the top of your screen now.
I thought I hit it.
You did now.
I did. Okay.
Perfect.
Sorry.
Who was speaking? Dave, go ahead.
yeah, Claire, I just wondered how you saw the future in terms of the breakdown between freshwater and marine, and whether you know, that sort of steering where you're going with this particular innovation.
Well, I mean, we're not limiting as far as freshwater marine, but it's about the scalable production of fish and seafood. So, you know, to that end, it's really about all those different species. We found that a lot of the innovation is clustered around the more expensive high-end species, and negligent around the the shrimp and other species. So, and mollusks, all of them. So I personally will be focusing more on the other species for this challenge.
Maybe the innovation is just more obvious in those sectors that attract a lot of money. It doesn't mean to say there's not innovation elsewhere, but perhaps it's different.
Well, I think it's really because of where they're located. I mean, the countries in the Nordic are just very well organized around and quite wealthy in their investment into like the salmon industry, and the smallholder farmer, like for the shrimp industry, it's a lot of smallholder farmers. And so, and in countries that don't have that kind of organized wealth, and so everybody's kind of on their own to come up with a better way. And a lot of them are, you know, have been farming the old-fashioned way for quite some time. I think that's really, you guys probably are smarter on this than me, but from what we've seen, that's pretty much it. I mean, out here in Asia Pacific, it's a highly disconnected smallholder farmer network. They know each other in their village next to them, but aside from that, not so much visibility.
Okay, great.
And
can I
smallholder farmer
take just one?
solutions. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I'm sorry about it. I'm worried about time. Can I take one more question if there is one from somebody else for Claire? I'm mindful she's in Singapore and it's getting late for her, so she probably won't be staying on for the discussion further on.
Yeah, I just say that the smallholder farmer solution, it's a different value proposition coming up with the smallholder farmer solution than it is for something that is massively farmed. And I think that's also a challenge in getting innovation to focus on it. It's not an easy way to go about it. It's not easy to tie together all the smallholders, but it's even harder because you know you're not going to be able to monetize your solution through the smallholder because they just don't have the funds.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Claire. That was very interesting. Thank you, Fergal.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thanks a lot. So So I was just going to move on to the next speaker, which is Johan Johansson, talking to us about valorization of aquaculture side streams. Sorry to eat a little bit into your time, Johan. We'll see if we can balance that if we need to. Okay.
Okay.
Go right ahead.
No worries. Okay. Does this look okay? Are you in presentation mode? Hello?
We can't see it yet. It just says you've started screen sharing, but I can't see slides. Now I can.
So it looks okay?
Yes.
Yes, okay, excellent. Well, good evening, everybody. My name is Johan Johansson. I work at NIBIO, the Norwegian Institute of Bioeconomy Research. And I would just like to start by congratulating Roberto and the entire consortium on a very interesting project and so much outcome that is relevant to the industry. I have to say it beats most of the projects, if not all, that I've been associated with, and I think that's a great advancement. Particularly, I would like to acknowledge the contribution of Hallstein and the company Waster and Lars at LS Optics, because they have provided much of the information that I will be presenting today. First, a couple of words on of NIBIO. NIBIO reports directly to the Ministry of Agriculture and Food in Norway, and as you can see, we're scattered at many stations across the country, representing a lot of different environments and biotopes, and that we cover most of the different bioeconomic areas, which is reflected by the vast number of departments we have in our institute. I listened to Carmen this morning. She gave a very good talk, summing up a very complex work package indeed. And I will try to build on that platform. Where Carmen spoke about products coming out of GAIN prototypes, I will speak of the prototypes as the GAIN products coming out of this exercise. And just to reiterate a little bit, the GAIN aquaculture side streams in this context is mortalities and sludge. I will speak on this from a Norwegian salmon farmer's perspective, so I apologize for that. It's not to be rude, but that's the familiar business to me, so I will stick to that. Mortalities is the fish that die throughout the production phase before harvesting. They represent, of course, a health hazard to other fish in the farms and also to the workers due to some cumbersome work that lies in handling these mortalities. The other side stream, sludge, is the particulate material that exists in the outlet water of aquaculture activities. This is today limited to feces and feed waste as the particulate matter, and this is now regulated, so it's mandatory to treat and to rinse from all the new land-based farming license activities in Norway. We foresee that in the future, when the technology allows, this will be extended to offshore farms and to dissolved matter as well. Just to put some numbers on this, I've looked at the recent data officially published regarding Norwegian salmon farming. And as you can see, the side streams amount to a significant volume. 65 million mortalities, if we assume that they weigh a kilo each. This is mortalities that are post-smolt after entering sea. That would give us a biomass of 65,000 tons. And looking at sludge, if we use the conversion factor that GAIN has reported, the feed usage should indicate a dry matter content of 315,000 tons. So it's a massive amount. So looking at mortalities first. The state of the art today is mincing the mortalities, treating with formic acid, and to reduce the pH to about 3.5, and then store this until it can be shipped wet. The drawbacks are obvious. The sanitation is incomplete. It's dangerous to the workers. Fermentation still goes on in these containers, and several of them explode every year, causing a lot of problems. And it's a costly shipping because it is large volumes, as no water is taken out of this bulk product. The GAIN innovation has the advantage of drying the mortalities on site with superheated steam, and it's interesting to see that we have traveled from a TRL level, technology readiness level at 5, all the way up to 9, and this is now a marketed system. The advantages is that it's sanitary. There is no acid handling or any other additives for that matter. The shipping volumes is minimal, and all the valorization pathways are still open after using this system. If we look a little bit at the LCA reports from the GAIN project, they underline this and demonstrate a fantastic improvement in sustainability compared to the state of the art. So this is really, really good results all over, I would say. This system has been exploited very well already. There is a distribution agreement with the company that has started selling this equipment worldwide, and the first installation in a fish farm has already been done in Croatia. And there are several other ongoing negotiations for sales, and new EU subsidiary of Waster has been developed in Italy, who now produces all these technologies so that they are close to the market. Looking at the other side stream, the sludge. Here, the state of art in the industry would be a filtration with a relatively coarse filter. It could be quite coarse, but very seldom finer than 150 micrometers mesh width. With filtration, there comes a certain level of dewatering. It could be anywhere up to 20%, 25 even. And then the dewatered sludge is either stored on site until they have enough to ship, or it's dried. And of course, the problem lies then in the coarse filtration, which is not so, which doesn't give us as high removal rates as we would like. Often polymers has to be used to capture things due to the high mesh width. So it's not really a filter; it's more a sieve actually. These polymers give us two problems. They bind a huge amount of water in itself, and they also close the door on some of the valorization pathways. If we choose to store it on site, sludge still is very active with a lot of microbes, and they produce H2S gas, which is a problem in itself, but the shipping is quite costly because of the large volume. Those who invest in a drying system, they pay the price in terms of higher electricity bills. And here the GAIN innovation too has some really good advantages. Above all, the filtration level is much better. They have 6 micrometers mesh width, and the energy effectiveness in the watering and drying is a fantastic 300 watts. They actually measure this to 250 watts, but they want to be a little bit careful when selling these. But 300 watts, you should be aware that is lower than most of the filter systems alone. And then you have the drying in addition. So this is a completely new way of handling wet waste streams. So this has gone from TRL 4 to 8, and I will address that a little bit later. in more detail. Looking back at the LCA data, we see that there's still a positive trend, but surprisingly to me, there was much less of a positive footprint development than for the mortality innovation. And this is unexplainable to me. So I really don't understand, because the masses or the reduction in volume transported is vastly greater than in the case of the mortalities. So here I urged the GAIN consortium to look at what could be the cause for this and to disseminate this particularly, because that would be of high interest both for the industry as well as for the further development of this innovation. The third innovation that I will address today is the adaptation of the Waster superheated steam dryer to process the watered sludge. And as with the mortalities, this holds the advantage of giving a sanitary product with no microbial activity. It's very uniform and stable product, and again, shipping volumes are kept at a minimum. Looking at the exploitation side, we see that for the filter dryer, which were intended to be a one single unit to take the sludge all the way from the recirculation system and into dry matter, they are now in the final stage of test running, and when I spoke to them yesterday, they are currently running an agreement with the farmer that if they can operate now without downtime for 1 month, the farmer will acquire the system. All the lessons learned during this project has been implemented in a new system, the S4, which they have constructed already. And 2 of the smaller test models that they have built has been bought one by us in Nibio for similar purposes, and also a Norwegian company called Scandi Energy. Scandi Energy has also entered an agreement with them to distribute and market these technologies, and they are now, they report that they are now talking with both vendors to produce this equipment and also several potential customers, and are positive to conclude the first sale within the end of this year. So here is a video I got last night from one of the farmers that just sent me a video from his camera to just demonstrate that the system is operational. So you see, it doesn't have the same texture as the fine-grained powder from the Waster dryer, but it's nevertheless working well. And it consistently lies between 87 and 94% dry matter. So it's at its target and where it should be. Sludge exploitation 3. So that would be the Waster system that uses dewatered sludge. So the prerequisite is a filter system before this. But after bringing the dry matter content up to 10%, the Waster dryer can do the rest. And this system has been successfully installed in 3 different fish farms, and are now receiving a great interest both in Norway and in EU. So that we foresee to see these at many sites in the future. Our interest, I would say, from Nibio is both in the innovations themselves, in the technologies, which we see as vastly enabling, not only to treat wastewater, but also to handle all sorts of wet products, and to be able to, in contrast to other water treatment systems, actually hold the promise of being an integral part of the water treatment inside the RAS units in the future. It promotes circularity, the low cost of operation and the low investment cost allows us to effectively get hold and capture nutrients and side streams that were previously unavailable to us because there was just no economic upside in gathering them and make them available to some type of central processing unit. But this is about to change, and we see a whole range of interesting projects coming up with this equipment. And the valorization of side streams is also very interesting because we don't close any doors. Instead, we open them up with these systems. And I would like to stress particularly the fact that both when it comes to evaluation of dried sludge as biofuel in cement ovens and organic fertilizer in growing barley, the waster technology has outperformed all the other technologies on the market, which is a huge achievement in itself. So we will continue to endorse this technology and to be looking for projects and applications to use this in the future. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Johan. Thanks also very much for getting us back sort of near the program schedule. Nevertheless, if there are questions for Johan, I'll be glad to take a couple. I would certainly not ask a question, but extend my congratulations, because I think this is well beyond what anybody hoped to achieve within a project that was not aiming for TRL 9s. And so, yes, it's very impressive.